Let me ask you that because, I mean, at some point, I don't know if you remember, when INEC chairman himself did say they had two judgments, one from Abuja High Court, then the other one from Zamfara. And as such, what could they have done other than leave out the name at an initial stage now of APC on the ballot? Were they right in that instance?
They were also not right in that respect because there are two things. The decision of the High Court in Zamfara is a positive decision. It says accept the nomination of APC. The decision of the Federal High Court in Abuja is saying there were no primaries and as such there was no nomination. It didn't say accept or refuse nomination. Therefore, if that is the case, it means that INEC is obligated to abide the positive decision awaiting the outcome of the Court of Appeals decision. Now, interestingly, before the conduct of the election, the Court of Appeal Abuja did nullify that decision in the Federal High Court Abuja to say it was filed out of time and as such there wasn't any valid decision. And as such, INEC, even when it was trying to pick and choose the decision it wants to abide by, was bound to abide the decision of the Zamfara High Court that was yet to have to set aside until after the conduct of the election.
Well, I remember INEC saying that there wasn't any such thing as pick and choose. They were in a situation and they were advised by their lawyers that that was what they had to do. But Mr. Yao is itching to come in on this one. So, Mr. Yao, could you go ahead?
The sections that Barrister is quoting, that's Section 31. Section 31 did not say that INEC must accept the list of the candidate whatsoever happen prior to the receiving of the list of any candidate of any political party. Section 31 says that 60 days before the commencement of election, parties must submit their nominees of candidates to various positions to the INEC. That was what Section 31 said. Go to Section 87 of the Electoral Act. Section 87 of the Electoral Act, subsection 1, says that there must be a primary election. Then Section 2 says that primary election must be two types, direct and indirect. What was adopted in Zamfara is indirect primary election due to the dissolution of the executive of Zamfara state, of the APC. Then Section 3 says that indirect primary election, if you choose indirect primary election, then there is procedure for it. If you go to Section 11, subsection 11 of the Electoral Act, says that all the parties, all the aspirants must be given equal opportunity to go into election. If they have no opportunity to go and contest, then they have the right to go to court. That is Section 16. To fight against what has happened in that election. In the case of Zamfara State, APC appointed an electoral committee. Section 16 of the Constitution of the Electoral Act says that there must be a committee that is appointed by the party, from the party headquarters, to go and conduct the primary election. And APC set up electoral committee to go and conduct that primary election, led by the chairman of Alhaji Abu Fari of that time. That first committee took place when they went to Zamfara. On the course of conducting that primary election, there was crisis. When the state governor sees that he will lose that election gallantly, he sent talks and sent away people, beating them. To the extent 5 people were killed in Zamfara state. Then the chairman, Abu Fari, cancelled that primary election during the course of that primary election. And to tell you that there was no primary election in Zamfara state that time, even the governor accepted that. Because if he did not accept, why should he say that he did not accept Abu Fari to come back and conduct the primary election again after the dissolution of that primary? Chairman of the APC, Adam Ashumale, after that council of that first primary election come out to the world and tell the world that state governor cannot conduct a primary election. State party chairman cannot. Chairman of the local government cannot conduct a primary election. But electoral panel set up by the party are the one in charge of conducting primary and announcing primary election. That was what happened at that time. Then they set up another committee, which Governor too rejected it as well. Then they set up another committee to come and conduct both the two. That was the state, if you can recall, it was the state governorship and the state assembly elections that are supposed to take place first before the Senate and House of Representatives. So if there was primary at the first instance, then there is no need for any primary to take place again, including the governorship, the state assembly, the House of Representatives, and the Senate on the same day, set up by another committee of the APC
let me ask,
national headquarters.
Let me ask Mr. Mohammed this question. Mr. Mohammed, they going to one of the sections that was quoted by Mr. Yao now, section 87 sub 9, says, and I quote, where a political party fails to comply with the provisions of this act in the conduct of its primaries, its candidate for election shall not be included in the election for the particular position in issue. This is what the provision says, and I think, well, maybe this is what INEC acted upon. So how do you react to this?
You see, you have to understand the historiology of that section. Section 87 of the Electoral Act is an innovation that moves away from the old position of the law that says aspirants do not have any right to challenge nomination. It's an offshoot of the Amechi and INEC's case, the Hope Uzodinma and Izunaso's case, the Igwu and Ararume's case, which is to the effect that political parties do breach their guidelines for the conduct of primaries, and as such, they do their nomination as they please. And because the legislature wanted to change that, it enacted that very excellent provision. But note, that provision in section 87 gives only aspirants the right to challenge a primary that is not properly conducted. Nobody else can. And that is why in several decisions of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal, where INEC takes a position to support any of the primaries, they get a reprimand from the Supreme Court saying, you are a neutral body, it's not your business, you have no right to go and take a position if it is pertaining to primaries. Allow the persons who are disgruntled to take a position, but you cannot take a position as to whether or not primaries were properly conducted. Therefore, it is only where the aspirant properly exercises his right pursuant to section 87 that he can get the reliefs under section 87. Now, INEC does not have the right to take a position prior to an order of court, because a finding that primaries were conducted or not conducted is judicial, is not administrative. So INEC cannot sit down and say, oh, we have observed pursuant to section 87 that there were no primaries, and as such we are not going to take nomination, because that would be a flagrant breach of section 31 sub 1 that says they should not refuse nomination for whatever reason.
Mr. Yao, let me ask Mr. Yao, how do you react to this very, very quickly? What's your response to this?
What I would say is INEC is a commission that were charged with the responsibility of conducting all the elections in Nigeria. Therefore, INEC being an observer in conducting primary election in Zamfara State, the Zamfara State INEC reported to the national body of INEC that the election did not take place that time, and it didn't take place that time. Everybody knows in the whole world, the committee set up, the panel set up who are being discharged to go and conduct that primary election has said it to the world after October 7, 12 a.m. in the night, that they did not conduct any primary election in Zamfara State. And they said it. Both you channels, television, and other media in Nigeria were there direct, and you televise it, that committee chairman tell to the world that there is no primary election taking place.
Okay, Mr. Yao, just a minute. We'll come back and get both of you to react to some permutations out there in a moment. Stay with us. All right, it's our concluding moments now. And gentlemen, you both have 1 minute to conclude this. And let me ask the question. Mr. Mohammed, let me start with you. Do you see a scenario where the courts maybe if Supreme Court rules, then they may have a scenario where they may order fresh elections without the APC participating in that elections?
Yeah, that is you see, the outcome of the decision of the Supreme Court could go either way. The Supreme Court could agree with the Court of Appeal and say, yes, the Court of Appeal was right, there was not a proper analysis of the evidence, and as such, the High Court decision that was set aside by the Court of Appeal is rightly set aside. Or the Court of Appeal could say no, the Supreme Court could say no, the Court of Appeal was wrong, and as such, the primaries, the decision of the High Court is right, and as such, INEC did not have any power to refuse, to reject any nomination whatsoever. In that circumstance, it will stand. Of course, with the third alteration, with the fourth alteration now, if the Supreme Court comes to the conclusion that, if the Supreme Court comes to the conclusion that the decision of the Court of Appeal is right, it has laid a precedent in the case of Karfi and APC, where it says, oh, because there was no proper nomination in Kano State, the person who is the second runner-up be declared. Okay. It could do that, or it could say, if we want to go by the fourth alteration and then say, okay, let's go back and have a rerun.
Right. Mr. Yao, what do you see happening?
What is happening is, INEC has two options, because I am still saying it. There was no primary election in Zamfara State. Even Chairman Adam Oshomole testified it. After October 7, he wrote a letter to the INEC that there was no primary election in Zamfara State, but there was consensus. And there was no consensus. If there was consensus, Senator Maraho and G8 will not go to the court to challenge that primary. It was the chairman faction, the faction chairman of the APC,
what happened eventually?
The one under the governor Abdulaziz Yari, that went and conduct a kangaroo primary.
Okay, what do you think will happen eventually?
What will happen? Supreme Court will make judgments that PDP will took over, the runners-up, which is PDP, will took over the whole seat in Zamfara State. Because it happened during Amechi was not the one who contest the general election, but he conducted primary election in 2007. Then Supreme Court judged that Amechi will be the governor. It has happened in Nigeria. Even now in Zamfara State, there was no primary. If there is primary, Kabiru Mara and Co will not have gone to the court. And even that judgment of Kotiri in Zamfara, it was the governor who influenced the judge.
Okay, we need to go. I'm afraid that's how far we can go. Abdul Mohammed, the legal practitioner, and Abubakar Yao, a political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming on today on Sunrise Daily. Well, that's the show as well today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I am Akine here saying have a wonderful day.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.